couldn't. I love the night. That's the only time I feel really alive.
That's what David wants.
Blood, I was to find, was a necessity as well.
A vampire in love with a slayer. It's rather poetic. I am the monster that breathing men would kill. I am Dracula.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I'm your host, Lena Nazari. To find me, go to Instagram, The Beautiful Dead Podcast. That's where you're going to see most of my vampire shenanigans. I actually just got back from a weekend in Philadelphia where I saw My Chemical Romance, and then I went to the Oddities Expo, and then I went to the Mahoning Drive-In and got to see Lost Boys and Near Dark on the big screen. But before that, I got to see Tim Capello, who is the saxophone player from Lost Boys. He was all oiled up. He played live for us. I even got pulled up on the stage to dance with him. It was once in a lifetime. I still can't believe. I remember last year talking to Jacob Givens and saying, I wonder if I'm ever going to get to meet him. Flash forward.
Good.
But I think the most important piece of vampire music to come out of the 80s would be the saxophone solo.
Of course, because it's referenced in everything. It's referenced in everything. The shirtless saxophone,
with
hair
the
tied
chains.
with the chains, and the it's leather pants. It is whatever
like,
it is.
That saxophone player had probably no clue.
No clue. And the filmmakers at the time, they're showing this kind of seedy underbelly of like vampire parties, and they're going, what would be so cool? And it is wild to me that they greased that guy up, got the saxophone, and thought, this is going to be cool. This is cool. And I think in 1987, we probably thought it was cool. I probably was like,
it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's cool. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you watch it now and you go, oh, wow.
Wow. And somewhere that guy is like, well, you know what I did in the 80s.
Oh,
Remember
my God.
that scene in The Lost Boys? That was me.
Oh, please tell me that guy does cons. I hope he does cons. I hope he goes around
You
the
gotta
country. And
track
goes,
him down.
I'm the guy.
You gotta track him down.
My theory is this was like their interpretation of, if you don't make good choices, children, you could end up in the dark, seedy underworld of tiki torches and oiled up saxmen. Because, like, I'm just like, what is happening?
It was outdoors. It was on the beach, but I'm like, it looked like a full-on music festival. And I think we're supposed to meant to believe it's just like, oh yeah, they're having just music outdoors. And
Yeah. Do you know what I want to know is, did he oil himself up? Or was there somebody that oiled him up? Did he ask to be oiled? Did he arrive already oiled? That's what I want to know.
by the way, so I haven't watched this in a pretty long time until last night. I didn't realize that scene happened so early in the movie. And for some reason, I misremembered. I'm like, oh yeah, is he like one of the vampires? I'm like, oh no, that's it? He just does the sexy sax.
And P.S., that guy is still riding those coattails.
Yes, and he deserves it because he's the most
him up
memorable
and I was like, he's still like doing concerts as the guy from Lost Boys.
Why would you not? Why would you ever do anything else?
I would wear that outfit every day.
Yes.
I would just be at the grocery store with chains around my neck, oiled up.
My regret is that I didn't get into good enough shape to do it for this episode.
Cosplay it, yeah.
I also didn't have time to learn the saxophone. I would have really liked to do both those things.
meet him, not only did I get his autograph and a picture with him, but he pulled me up on stage to dance. So that was a lot of fun. And if you're not on Instagram, you missed it. You'll also get to see the places I'm going to be. So coming up, October 18th, I will be at Labriola Winery here in Pittsburgh for a Vampire and Wine event. The first half will be books and book-related stuff, vampire questions. And then the second half, I will get into costume and I will be doing a lecture on the history of vampires and wine. So that's pretty exciting. So come check that out in Pittsburgh. The following weekend, October 25th, I'll be at VAMPA, the Vampire Paranormal Museum in Doylestown. I will be doing a lecture on the history of vampires. And again, I will have my books. So if you want the new book, Alex, the first chance to get your hands on it in person where I can autograph it in Pittsburgh will be at the winery, and in Philadelphia will be at VAMPA. So put those on your calendar. And then Halloween weekend, I will be down in New Orleans in the French Quarter for the Vampire Masquerade Ball. So make sure you're following me on Instagram or you're going to miss a whole lot of pictures. And you're going to get to see what I do in the French Quarter on Halloween night, because the ball is November 1st. So Halloween night, I'll be in the French Quarter. I don't even know what I'll be up to. More than likely there will be alcohol involved. So if you're not following me on Instagram, you're really missing out. I am fresh from the gym. I did shoulders and now I'm here, I'm showered, I'm ready to talk. You will see if you're watching on YouTube that I'm in a tank top, which I don't like to do too often on the channel, but it is very humid and I have a sinking suspicion we may be getting a thunderstorm because I can just feel the humidity is getting thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker, and usually that breaks open. So let's hope we get a thunderstorm while I'm recording. I didn't know if I was going to get this out. I just want to give you guys the heads up. I did just sign on to do the Pittsburgh Renaissance Festival from August 23rd to September 28th. I will be a beer wench. So for 6 weeks, I'll be working 3 jobs. So I'm going to try and continue to get stuff out every week, but please bear with me as I try and pull this off, okay? I am determined to make the most of spooky season and not drop any of the balls I'm currently juggling. So please, please bear with me. All right, I think that's enough of an opening. I think you need to strap in, folks, because this is going to be a big one. So I was asked to do Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust by PCS Extra Videos 4958. So thank you for asking me to do Bloodlust. I actually had never seen it. I have seen the first one, Vampire Hunter D, many times. I never saw the sequel. I don't know how I missed it. So it felt kind of silly to do the second one and not the first one. So we're going to do it. We're going to do both. Be ready. Get popcorn, blood, water, beer, whatever you need, because this is going to be a big one. So a few things that you need to know before we start talking. 1, spoiler alerts. I talk about everything from the beginning to the end, so prepare yourself. I'm going to ruin things. 2, Vampire Hunter D is a series of illustrated novels that started in 1983, and as of January 2025, there are 56 novels. So it is quite the universe. So if you sit down to watch this first movie, you might be very confused because there's stuff that you learn in the novels that are not explained here. So with that being said, there's something else we need to talk about, which is Dee's left hand. And it sounds a lot dirtier than it is, okay? So you need to know about his left hand. And I'm going to read this straight from the fandom wiki, so thank you to whoever wrote this. Dee's constant companion is his talking left hand, which is sometimes referred to as left hand. It is revealed that this is some sort of symbiotic entity which has taken up residence in Dee's hand, although why he has done so is not made clear. The hand, or Lefty, as some of the fans have started calling him, appears to have supernatural powers independent from his host and occasionally uses them to help Dee. More often than not, however, Lefty generally prefers sitting back and letting Dee do the work, usually throwing in a sarcastic comment or two at Dee's expense. It is more likely than not that his stomach, the hand's stomach, is a pocket dimension. Understand? Clear? Perfect. All right, let's talk about the movies. Vampire Hunter D. Okay. Here we go. I'm gonna have a drink. This was from a local brewery here that I'm drinking right now. If you're not on YouTube and you're listening to the podcast, you'll be confused. But it's from Penn Brewery here in Pittsburgh, and they were at the Spooky Market when I was there. And this is strawberry funnel cake shandy. Delicious. And I have 2 left, and I'm going to finish them off before August is over, because I'm ready for pumpkin everything. All right, let's do this. Vampire Hunter D. Oh, it's so hot, you guys. All right, summer is the worst. On-screen text tells us that this story takes place in the distant future, when demons and mutants slither through a world of darkness. In a field at night, a young girl is walking, carrying a gun and wearing a cross. Oh, heads up, everybody. I will be shocked if YouTube lets me share any clips, because I feel like this is going to be one of those that is very heavily protected. So if you watch the video and you see no clips, I'm sorry. I promise you I tried. Okay? All right. A monster who looks kind of like the Loch Ness if it lived on land. It rises up and she hits a button that turns on a bunch of lights. She calls for her horse Luke, chasing the monster. She's able to shoot the monster, but it's not quite dead. It rears up and grabs her horse Luke. Oh, horse stuff. Even though it's a cartoon, that's rough. She uses this like electric whip that she has to pull the monster off Luke, but it is too late. And then out of the darkness comes a werewolf, which grabs Luke. Poor freaking Luke. Awful. The werewolf pulls off her cross necklace and then runs when a vampire appears in front of her. It is one of the nobles, which I assume are like the masters. So when I say nobles, it is a specific bloodline of vampires, and they seem to be the most powerful. She tries to shoot, but he blocks it with his power and then flashes Fang. She is mesmerized as he opens his cape. Opening title. And this shot, by the way, like him in silhouette in darkness, very, very cool. Now a black-hatted man rides on horseback through a desolate landscape. This is D, if you don't know the movie. He's got long flowing hair, a very chiseled face. I would love, guys, give me an idea of who you think could play him in a live action, because I don't know an actor that looks like him, but he looks like what I picture my vampire Soren looking like. Long hair, chiseled, buff, all the good stuff. He encounters the girl from the beginning as he rides down a road, and she looks ready to fight and asks him if he's a hunter. She tries to get him with her whip, but he's able to break its hold. He starts to ride away, and then she apologizes and begs him to help her. She needs the best hunter that she can find. She pulls off her choker to show him that she has been bitten by a noble, and this gets his attention. Now, her name is Doris, and she offers him a room and board and sex for his services. Clearly, she's like, I'll give you whatever you want, even my body, just please help me. At her home, a little boy is firing on a monster that's trying to eat one of their sheep, and this is Dan, Doris's brother. She arrives with Dee, and the boy thinks that Dee is the coolest man he has ever seen. Dee immediately, like, Dan is just, Dee is the coolest. I want him to be my big brother. I have to hang out with him all the time. Doris then brings Dee and Dan into the village, where we meet a man named Greco, and he says, I see from your color that the rumors are true. He pulls her aside and says he knows that she was bitten by the Count. He knows why, he doesn't understand why she didn't ask him for help, since he's the mayor's son and could get her the very best hunters. She clocks him in the face and says, I've seen too many people suffer from the actions of you and your cronies. She uses the whip to put him in his place and then walks away. So he screams into the town square that Doris has been bitten by the Count and is infected with vampirism. So now the whole town and her little brother do know. She kept it secret from everybody. Doris is pulled into a meeting with the mayor, Greco, a doctor, and a sheriff. She's told that the rules are clear. Anyone bitten has to go to the camp. And the doctor says, no way, it's not fit for humans. Remember what happened 50 years ago. Dee asks what happened. So 50 years ago, a girl was bitten and they stuck her in the camp, and the Count was so pissed that he slaughtered a bunch of the townsfolk. The girl went mad and then died in the camp. Lovely. Dee tells them, let her stay free. I will fulfill my contract. They warn him that the Count is not the only vampire in the castle. Doris says, if it comes to that, I will kill myself. And now no one in town will do business with Doris. So she can't get groceries. She can't get stuff for her farm. No one will do business with her. Dan is off crying because now he knows that Doris has been bitten. And Dee tells him, don't cry around your sister because she needs all the strength she can get. Smile for her even if you're dying inside. It was a sweet moment between Dee and Dan. That night, she tucks Dan into bed. Dee is downstairs, and we hear this voice talking to him, making fun of him for being kind to Doris and her brother.
There's a little brother? You're not in love with her, are you?
And this is the left hand. This is why I had to tell you, because they just show it. And if you don't know about the left hand, you'd be like, what the fuck is happening? Still, even if you know about the left hand, you're a little confused, but at least I gave you some idea. Doris comes down and tells Dee that her father was a hunter, but he hunted werewolves. And that's how she knew what to look for in a hunter. Dee explains that the next night is the woman's moon, which is a red moon that the vampires won't feed under. So he thinks the Count will come this night to grab her since he can't feed the next night. He asks about the Count. Doris explains that he's called Count Magnus Lee, which is a great name. He used to rule over the land before her village was even there, but then years ago he disappeared. But 2 years ago, the lights returned to the castle. He is somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 years old, which will make him very powerful and very hard to kill. Dee explains to her Magnus will send the werewolves and the mutants first. We see the face on his hand. And then 2 people approach the farm, knocking out all of the crosses that are outside to protect the house. Dee steps outside. The female vampire thinks it's hilarious that Doris hired a hunter. She says Magnus is her father and he's called to Doris, but she hasn't come, so she needs to be punished. So we know that the vampires can call to those that they've fed on. She says her father thinks that Doris is the most beautiful girl he has ever seen with the sweetest blood. What a romantic, right? The male that is with her is called Ray. He is a mutant that can warp time and space, and he attacks Dee, but Dee is able to stab him. However, he uses his power to warp time and space, and now Dee has stabbed himself instead. But Dee does heal, and Lamika, who is the Count's daughter, recognizes him as a Dhampir, half vampire, half human. If you've never watched this podcast and you don't know what a Dhampir is, that is a Dhampir. So they decide they will fight another day. Lamika's at the castle speaking to a portrait of Dracula, and she refers to Dracula as their most treasured ancestor. Ray tells her that the Count is unhappy with their failure and she is to go to bed. Lamika slaps him and tells him, I know that you're kissing up to my father in the hopes that he'll turn you, but nothing as lowly as you will ever be in our family. The next day, Dee is riding through a desert and arrives at the castle. We see that he can sort of fly / levitate / jump very far and gracefully. Inside, the outer portion of the castle is filled with monsters, but he has a sunlight flashlight that sends them all running. He's attacked by a golem in the courtyard and is able to best the golem and get into the inner parts. His hand warns him that that was too easy and it's a trap. And Dee says, I know. And then he's attacked by sort of like a ghost beast. It looks like a ghost wolf, but survives and then runs into Ray, who throws him backwards and down into a ravine and into this sort of like underground cavern. His hand explains to him that these ruins are from the war 10,000 years prior. Dee is looking for a way out when he hears music and encounters 3 naked women playing harps. They all speak in unison and they turn into these snake-like creatures. And at first I thought they were sirens, but once they turned into snakes, I realized they were Lamia. And I love Lamia, by the way. If you have not seen Lair of the White Worm, go watch it. It is amazing. And it has a very, very young Doctor Who in it, so I think you'll enjoy it. Meanwhile, the doctor is telling Doris not to worry about Dee, that he will be back safely. And then he says, if you're falling for him, don't. He is not the man you think he is. And then the house is attacked by more mutants. Ray grabs Doris and tells her he is taking her to the Count. She says if he doesn't let the doctor and Dan go, then she's going to bite off her own tongue and kill herself. Ray says, he told me to bring you in one piece. At the castle, Lee says to Doris, you will be my bride by tomorrow night. And then he shows her a vision of Dee in the clutches of the Lamia, and he's unconscious as they are feeding from him. Then Lee lets Doris know that Dee is a Dhampir, the result of a human and a noble. So we know in this world, only nobles or masters can make a Dhampir. So that was good information. He sends her to her chambers so they can be married the next night, since he won't feed on her under the blood moon. The Lamia are trying to drain Dee, but he is too strong, and he wakes up with glowing eyes and fangs and then bites one of them as the other one screams. Lamika is standing next to the bed of the sleeping Doris, and she is so pissed that a human is what Lee has chosen to replace her mother. She doesn't want Doris to join the Lee bloodline. Dee runs into the room, throws Lamika down, grabs Doris, and runs out with her sleeping body. He fights his way through monsters, and we see that the hand can suck things into it and eat it. So that's why we're saying we think it's like a pocket dimension. So the hand can suck these creatures into its stomach. We also see that Dee's sword can cut monsters in half. He gets Doris home, but Ray is following. And Ray says he is not going to return to the castle without Doris. Doris wakes up and Dan tells her that Dee has been repairing all the damage to their house. That's a good guy. That night, the noble's carriage rides through town and stops in front of the hotel. The Count has sent some of his mutants to tell Ray that the Count has sent the time bewitching incense to help Ray fight Dee and bring Doris back. Doris and Dee find a note pinned to one of the outside crosses, and it says that Dan has been taken, and the note tells Dee to come alone or Dan will be killed. Dan has been placed on top of a very, very tall rock tower and is screaming for help when Dee arrives. Ray pulls out the incense and explains that when he lights it, it will paralyze anyone with vampire blood in it. Dee cuts off the hand holding the incense, which is so freaking badass. The doctor shows up at Doris's house. Meanwhile, Dee explains that Ray was given an ordinary candle, so it's very possible that the master is setting him up to die. Doris is now traveling with the doctor to a home that will protect them from vampires because of the inscription that's above the door. So we know that this world has some form of magic in it. It actually has a lot of magic in it. Then Lamika shows up. When Doris stands to fight, the doctor takes her, rips off her necklace and her shirt. So we get a cartoon boobie. He reveals that he is a vampire now, and we learn that once turned, the human side disappears. He says he used to look at her like a daughter, but now he wants to suck her blood. That's what we'll say. Lamika kills the doctor and reveals that she is there to help Doris run because she doesn't want her dad to marry and turn Doris. Greco shows up with the real incense, so we know that Greco stole it from Ray in the hotel. And he lights the incense, and this paralyzes Lamika. He gave Ray the fake one, so that sucks. He's going to use Doris as bait, then kill the Count when he comes for her. And Greco says, I'll save you if you marry me. Lamika is like, just kill me. Greco was going to oblige when Greco is shot by Dan, who has arrived with Dee. Now, Doris, Dan, Lamika, and Dee are all together. They drop Lamika off to return to the castle safely because they don't kill unarmed women who aren't attacking them. Lamika says, honor and love don't matter to my kind, and Dee says, your ancestor would not agree. And then we get a Doris shower scene for no reason at all. Now, Doris comes down after her shower, scantily clad, and asks Dee to run with her so he won't die. She admits her feelings for him. While he's holding her, he starts to vamp out, and she says, "You can feed if you want," but he fights off his need. She says, "I love you," and he says, "I know." Ooh, that would hurt. That would hurt. I think the only thing worse than if you say "I love you" and the person says "I know" is if they say "thank you." Anywho, now Greco's in real bad shape, and he comes across Ray, who now is missing one hand, who knows where Greco, and Ray knows that Greco was the one to steal his incense, so, probably didn't turn out great for Greco. Dee is outside the house when Greco lights the incense and paralyzes Dee. Ray decides fair is fair and then cuts off Dee's left hand. Lamika has been told that Dee is dead, and she actually seems pretty upset about it. Meanwhile, the night of the wedding is upon them. So we know that Dee's been paralyzed, left hand cut off. They grabbed Doris, took her back to the castle. There's a lot of stuff that's not shown to us that we just have to pick. There's a lot of jumping, a lot of scene jumping. All right. Meanwhile, Dee's left hand crawls back to him as Lamika is begging her dad not to marry and embrace Doris. And he says, "Don't worry, I'll get bored with her someday and I'll kill her." And she says, "This commoner being embraced into our family will ruin Lee's name." And he says, "No, because your mother was not noble born. I've been here for 10,000 years. I get bored. Sleeping with humans is one way to entertain myself, even though they are simple and stupid." She is having a very hard time believing that her mother was a human and lower class. So her dad throws her into a magic frozen state to remind her who is boss. Then he tells Ray he doesn't deserve to be turned yet, maybe 50 years from now, and that pisses Ray off. Dee's hand is reattached and starts to eat dirt, which I guess gives him strength. And then he tries to wake up Dee before the monsters kill him, and he is successful in doing it. So he's slamming Dee's chest, trying to wake him up, and he manages to wake up Dee right before they're going to get killed. Dan is in the castle and trying to save his sister, who appears to be in a trance, is being led to her wedding. Ray stands in their path and lights the incense, but the Count is way too strong for that. And he puts the light out with his eyes and then laser eye beams Ray, who explodes. Woof. The Count is kind of psyched that the night has been so exciting because, he's bored. So he's pretty excited, people are trying to kill him and he's going to get a new bride. The marriage ceremony is beginning, and just as he's about to bite Doris, Dee throws a dagger into his eye. The Count has a very long villain's monologue and calls Dee's mom a human slut. Damn. They fight. The Count has a great deal of power, so including telekinesis. He pins Dee to the ceiling. But then Dee vamps out and overcomes Magnus's power. And the Count is like, "Who the hell are you?" And Dee manages to push his sword through the Count's chest. The Count mind controls Doris to stab Dee, but she fights it off when Dan calls out her name. And then Magnus is now pinned into the wall. And Lamika comes in and Magnus is like, "Kill him, my daughter." And she's like, "No, we've been in power long enough. It is time for our house to fall." And then it's revealed that Dee's father is, everybody say it all together, Count Dracula. And Lamika is like, "You are the most noble of all of us." She wants to die in the castle with her father, and Dee is like, "But you're a Dhampir like me. You can choose to live as a human." And she said, "I would rather die as a noble than live as anything else." And he's like, "All right, whatever, you made your choice." Doris, Dan, and Dee leave the castle as it crumbles down and is swallowed into the earth. And then we get a happy montage of sunny fields and flowers and skies. And Dee is riding on his horse Doris and Dan are running, chasing to catch him, and they're yelling, "Goodbye, goodbye, remember what you said, remember you'll visit us." And then he rides off into the landscape alone, and we get credits. It's very Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter. Like, you know, they are tortured men who ride into town, save you, you fall in love with them, but then they ride off by themselves. And that is the first Vampire Hunter D. And we had to talk about it in order to get to the second part, which is Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. So if you need a little tiny break, pause this, go stretch, get a snack, come back, because we are about to talk about the second one. Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, which came out in 2000. I did not write down when did the first one come out. I want to say it was the 80s, because I remember watching it. I remember everyone in high school was watching it. 1985. So 15 years later, the sequel comes out. Let's talk about it. I wasn't sure what to expect, I will tell you. So, we open on a town at night. The streets are empty, yet we see a shadow move across the sky, melting crosses and knocking out street lamps. A young girl is asleep in bed when her window opens. Someone with wings flies in and carries her out. And then we get on-screen text. It was a great opening. In the near future, vampires rule the night, but their numbers are dwindling. With huge bounties on their heads, a class of hunters has emerged. Bounty hunters. One hunter is unlike all the others. Now they keep saying Dunpeel, but I think it was mistranslated. It should be Dampier. So we're going to say Dampier. One hunter is unlike all the others. He is a Dampier, half human, half vampire, at war with himself, feared by all, tortured and alone, just how we like them. And he is Vampire Hunter D. We see a group of men holding guns as D approaches on a horse. He enters a building to see a man in a wheelchair praying when a man named Alan explains that he is the one who summoned D. Alan's sister, Charlotte, went missing 2 nights prior, taken from her room at night. Witnesses saw a carriage belonging to Meyer Link, a vampire. They gathered men to find him, but the men were all slaughtered. Alan is offering $10 million to the one who can kill Link. He's also hired hunters named the Marcus Brothers, who have a head start. Dee explains it might be too late for his sister, that she may have been tempted by the vampire, and this pisses off Alan. He does not like that. But the man in the chair tells him to calm down. This is Alan and Charlotte's father. He tells Dee if she is found changed, please make sure her death is painless, but Alan does not agree. Dee says 10 million isn't enough, and he's offered 20 million. That night, an armored vehicle arrives and a group of the undead surrounds it, but this vehicle is covered in crosses and lights that burn the vampires enough for the vehicle to speed away. The vampires chase it down and start to tear at the armor, so we know that the vampires are fast and strong, but these are like minion vampires, right? So we have our nobility like Meyer Link or Marcus Lee, and then we have these guys who are more like, I don't want to say fledglings because that's not right. Fledgling is just a new vampire. But these are more of the not master vampires. These are the followers. They're more animalistic, more zombie-like. We also see that they can look human, but when they vamp out, they have pointed ears, fangs on the top and the bottom, and red glowing eyes. They almost look werewolf-like. But again, these are the lower class vampires, not the masters. The vehicle wrecks, and one of the men inside says, "This place is overrun with them. He must have been here already." He gets out and has a small crossbow like this weapon on his wrist. We see 4 men and 1 woman. The woman is Layla, and she tells a man to stay in the tank. The hunters shoot them with arrows, chop off their heads. Layla blows a hole in the center of one vampire who just keeps coming, so then she blows her head off. Then we see a field of vampires dead. So apparently these lower class vampires can be killed in many different ways. They now hear a horse running, and one hunter shoots off his arrow, but it's grabbed by Dee in one of the coolest shots I've ever seen in anime. So then the hunters introduce themselves. The arrow man is Borgoff. Then we have Kyle, who has these like spinning dagger things. And then Nolt, who has this giant spiked hammer. So then Dee introduces himself and rides off. So the hunters know exactly who he is because his reputation precedes him. And they know that he is their competition. Layla jumps on a motorcycle and rides off. The next morning, Dee is following tracks into the desert when they see that it is filled with sand mantises, and his left hand tells him to run, but Dee just rides into the desert undeterred. Then they find what's called a resting house, and I guess this is like where the masters can hide, and it matches the sky. It's like camouflaged by the sky around it, so it's very hard to see. He places his hands against its walls, and the hand can see in and tell Dee that there are two inside. And as they're trying to find a way to get in, the sun is starting to set. We see a vampire inside is rising. We also see the motorcycle approaching with Layla on it, and she is coming towards Dee in the resting house. Layla on the bike, she has a massive gun on her shoulder, but the door to the house opens and a big horse-drawn carriage comes out with Meyer Link in it. Layla wrecks, but Dee is able to jump onto the carriage. He tells Meyer he wants the girl, but he says she wants to be with him and Dee should just move on. As Dee goes to swing his sword at the vampire, Charlotte calls out for Meyer from the carriage and distracts the hunter, who falls from the carriage as it speeds away. Dee says it's possible that she does want to be with the vampire, but the hand is saying she's too young, she can't know what she wants. Meanwhile, Layla is hurt. So Dee climbs onto his horse and is going to leave when Layla calls out for her mother. And Dee comes back because he feels bad, binds her wounds, stops and binding her wound and stopping her breathing. I think I meant bleeding. Stopping her bleeding. Layla is less than thankful. Dee leaves her and the rest of the hunters arrive. Later in the tank, the hunters say they're on their way to the Barbary. So apparently it is this place that is just filled with like really bad people and monsters, and they know they need to go there because they know that the Barbary help protect the vampires. And that's where they go when they feel threatened. So they need to go to the Barbary, but they really don't want to. Inside the tank, we see the man that Layla told to stay in the tank. His name is Grove. And he's asking Layla if she's okay. And she's like, you should be resting, not worrying about me. And he asks if it was the Dhampir that saved her. And she says it was, but please don't tell anyone. They come to a stop when they see the vampire's carriage in the middle of this like canyon. And they're like, he's stopped here, that's weird. So Nolt, Kyle, and Borgoff decide to go and check it out. They tell Layla, stay inside with Grove. Knowlton slams the hammer into the carriage, but it's a trick. It's like an illusion. From above them, a voice calls out saying, you shouldn't have come to the Barbary. And then like something jumps up out of the ground and it's gone before you can really see what it is. And Nolt says, beware the shadow. And the other two turn to look at him to see that he's just staring forwards and there's blood pouring out of his mouth. And then a voice above them cackles and it fades to black. Meanwhile, Dee is also headed to the Barbaroi, and his hand is begging him to please, please, please turn around. As Dee enters the building, there are these creatures like all over watching him. Dee dismounts and it's this old man who approaches them. He tells the Barbaroi to stop protecting Meyer Link, but they were paid $100 million to protect Link, so they are not interested in ending the protection. The Barbaroi says, I'm so sorry, you have to die. And then all the creatures approach him. Outside, Kyle watches Dee go inside. And inside the tank, Borgoff is drawing up a liquid into a syringe and says, "Sorry, Grove, but we need you on this one." And then they inject it into him. Inside, Dee is saying, "I have no problem with the Barbaroi. I'm sorry that I have to kill so many." Then we see this green ghost man flying into the building, and it starts firing off these like light blasts at the creatures, and that's Grove. So he can like spirit project, and when he's in spirit form, he can like kill a bunch of things. Kyle screams, "Go, Grove, kill every last one of them." Meanwhile, Layla is standing over Grove's body saying, "Hold on, hold on." So clearly this takes a lot out of him. Inside, Spirit Grove is destroying all the creatures, and the old man screams, "Get the carriage out." And the carriage starts to speed out, but Spirit Grove follows. Dee is also speeding after them, and he slices Grove's spirit in half, so then Grove wakes up in his body. The old man is like, "Oh well, I guess I won't be here to see the final battle." Dee speeds after the carriage when it turns into black fabric and covers Dee, who falls over the edge of the cliff but is able to grab the side of the mountain as he falls. So one of these creatures can sort of take the shape of other things, but then when it goes into its own form, it's just this like big black sheet. Meanwhile, the tank is speeding after the real carriage. Protecting the carriage are two of these creatures. So there, one is a jester-looking guy named Benji, and the other is a beautiful girl named Caroline, who jumps off the carriage into the roadway and allows the tank to run into her, and then she disappears. And then we see that she has grabbed the bottom, and she turns into this like goo and slides up through the floor into the tank where Layla and Grove are. And her goo turns into metal spikes, and she's destroying the tank from the inside. So now the tank is wrecked. Kyle knows that the monsters are outside, and he is calling out for them. Dee is fighting this sheet spell, whatever this spell thing is, and it's wrapped around him, and he tells his hand to swallow it up, which he does. Kyle and Borgoff are able to kill off the jester monster, so now they need to get the tank up and running, and Layla thinks the carriage is hiding deep in the mountains or it's going to set sail. We see the carriage is moving with Meyer and Charlotte inside, and now Dee is on foot because his horse was thrown over the mountain. Dee's horses do not fare well in these movies. So the hunters are in a nearby town getting a part for their tank, and Layla sees Dee approaching. She tells Kyle to return to the tank and she'll be there shortly. Then she heads into the tavern and orders a beer. The sheriff comes in and confiscates her weapon. She tells them that a Dampier has just arrived into town. Dee buys a new horse, but the sheriff and his men pull a gun on Dee, and they tell him to get out of town. But the man who sold Dee the horse, his name is Polk, tells the townsfolk that a Dampier once saved 10 children from the hands of a vampire. And then we find out that Polk was one of those children, and Dee had saved him. So Polk pulls a gun on the men, on the townsmen, so that Dee can leave safely. The carriage has stopped in a sunny field so Charlotte can get out and enjoy the fresh air. And Meyer tells his man, like, let her enjoy the sun because she misses it. Dee approaches her and asks her why she is with the vampire, and she says that she is in love with Meyer and she wants to be with him. Dee tells her, you can't understand and you're gonna be turned and you don't know what that means. And she says, I would rather die than live without Meyer. Layla has been listening, and she goes up to Charlotte, knocks her down, and calls her an idiot. She says, I am taking you home. Do you know how many people have died at the hands of your Meyer? And Charlotte says, none. Layla grabs Charlotte and pulls a gun on Dee, saying she's not sharing the reward, when Caroline attacks. Dee tries to fight her, but he's weakened from being in the sun for too long. He hides, and his hand tells him he needs to dig a hole and bury himself to survive. But he keeps fighting, and he's able to chop off the head before he collapses. Then we see Caroline open her eyes, and we see that Layla came just in time to see Dee trying to dig the hole. Layla tells the other humans where she's at and lies, saying that she didn't see Dee. Then she sees him buried in the ground before she runs, but is grabbed by Caroline. She stabs a dagger into Caroline's forehead, who isn't phased, until a lightning bolt hits the dagger and fries her. Layla climbs into the place that Dee is resting to stay dry, because he's like inside the like a big trunk of a tree. And I looked it up. I guess he gets like sun poison or sun sickness if he's in the sun for too long, and the only way to regenerate is to like dig down into the soil for a few hours. He starts to wake, and she tells him not to try anything, that she'll be gone the second the storm is over. And he says, "Let me guess, your family was killed by vampires." So she tells the story, and yep, both parents were killed by vampires. Now she's a hunter, spending her life killing vampires. We've heard this one all the time. They decide that whichever one of them dies first, the other one will bring flowers to their grave. The storm ends. She says, "Now we're even," and then she leaves. The hunters are scoping out a bridge that they think the carriage will be on, since the vampires headed to the castle. They have to intercept before they reach the castle, because the castle would be certain death to the hunters. Later on, the carriage is on the bridge when it blows up. So we find out that there's like explosives that have been placed underneath different parts of the bridge. The carriage is now stopped because part of the bridge has been blown. The hunters approach and they say, "Give up the girl." Kyle opens the carriage and pulls her out. The man driving the carriage jumps over the side into the water. Meyer steps out of the carriage even though he starts to burn, and he comes after Charlotte as he's burning. They shoot arrows at him, but he keeps coming. Charlotte breaks free and runs into his arms as he burns and says, "I love you." She pulls an arrow from his back and puts it to her throat, saying she can't live without him. The monster that jumped off the carriage into the water is now back, and he appears to be a werewolf. It attacks and kills Kyle. Borgoff jumps off the bridge, and he goes to detonate the dynamite that he thought was still under the bridge, but the werewolf took the time that he had jumped off the bridge to pull all the dynamite off, and it's been thrown into the water by the werewolf. Layla is watching from far away and speeds towards the fight. The sun sets, Borgoff climbs from the river, the carriage is speeding away, and inside, Meyer is trying to heal from his burns, and he tells Charlotte if they can reach the city of the stars, they can be together. She lays down, and he's tempted to drink from her throat, but he stops himself. The tank is on the road again. Grove is telling Borgoff that they should quit the mission. It's not safe to go to the castle. Borgoff says, "We are not quitting," and Layla agrees. The werewolf hears the horse hooves approaching. He telepathically tells the vampires they're almost to the castle, and then jumps off the carriage to wait for Dee. The Hand explains to Dee that the castle is owned by Carmilla. So there's our vampire reference there, Carmilla. So we got Dracula in the first one, now we get Carmilla. And in this world, she is a countess who ruled for 5,000 years, but Dee's father, the vampire king, Dracula, was tired of Carmilla's bloodlust, so he killed Carmilla, but she haunts the castle to this day. The Hand says he knows why Dee is so hell-bent on catching the carriage. It's because he doesn't want Meyer and Charlotte to make a Dhampir like him. The carriage arrives at the castle. The werewolf and Dee face off. The werewolf tells Dee it was Carmilla that hired the Barbaroi to protect Meyer. He says he can die in peace, and we see that Dee has already taken his sword to him. Carmilla is showing Meyer and Charlotte to their rooms. She explains that all the rumors about her were not true. She reveals to them that her ship can take them to the city of the night where they can be safe. Once again, we see Meyer wants to bite her. He stops himself. She tells him to do it, but he's like, "You can't know what you're asking for. You're gonna live in darkness. I can't do that to you." It's one of the tropes I really hate is like, "No, I can't do this to you. I can't torture you like I'm tortured. You can't know what you're asking for." I hate that. Charlotte feels guilty for putting her family through hell, which means that they can't ever truly be happy unless they give their relationship 1,000%. He says, "We will talk about this on our trip, but I have business to attend to. Don't leave this room. I'll be right back." Then the hunters arrive in the castle. Meyer flies down into the lobby and Dee arrives, telling him that Charlotte wants to leave. Then an axe chops him in half and Dee turns into bats. Meanwhile, Charlotte sees Meyer calling to her. So we know we're having some kind of like, there's visions, mind control, something is going on here. Dee is now walking through the castle and his hand is telling him something is not right. Layla and Borgoff are leaving the tank. Grove begs Layla not to go in, but she ignores him. They enter the castle and split up. Now Dee sees a lake of blood with a woman saying, "Please understand, I loved your father. What choice did I have?" Borgoff sees 2 coffins open up with Kyle and Nolt inside. He drops his arrows and approaches them, but is stabbed in the back with one of his own arrows. Then Kyle and Nolt turn into bats and fly away. So we saw Meyer get killed, and then the person that killed him that looked like Dee turned into bats and flew away. And now Borgoff gets killed by something that looks like his 2 friends and then turns into bats and flies away. I hope you're following this. Now Layla sees herself as a little girl kneeling at a grave. Dee's mother is asking for forgiveness, but he just chops off her head and the hallucination disappears. So he's like on to what's happening. Layla is hugging the little version of herself saying, "It wasn't your fault," when Dee shows up and pulls her out of her illusion. Then Carmilla laughs, turns into bats, and disappears. So in case you weren't like following what was happening, Carmilla is playing all these mind games with each person and taking them one by one. Borgoff comes into the room and Layla sees he's been bitten. He flashes Fang and grabs Layla, telling Dee, "Drop your weapons." Grove's ghost comes in and kills Borgoff. Then he disappears as we see Grove die. So he only had one more flight left in him, and he essentially sacrificed himself. Dee is running to Charlotte as she walks up a stairway to Meyer. And then Meyer bites her. Meyer then disappears. Charlotte falls to the ground. Her blood flows out and up the stairs to Carmilla's corpse. Meyer pulls himself back together as Carmilla's spirit attacks Dee, chastising him for being a vampire killing their own kind as her body starts to rise from the grave. He uses his own power to block hers and then stabs her spirit. Her body climbs out of the grave and scrambles towards Charlotte when Meyer flies in and protects Charlotte. Meyer attacks the body as Dee kills the spirit, and now the castle starts to crumble. Layla pulls a gun on Meyer as he begs Charlotte to please come back to him. She touches his face. She says she was happy for the dream, their dream of the city of the night. And he says, "It's not a dream, we're going there." And then she dies and he cries as he holds her. Layla decides not to kill him as he lifts up his beloved Charlotte, carries her towards the ship. Dee says, "Put her down. I'm taking her to the family that loves her." He lays her down and then Meyer and Dee fight. He stabs Meyer, but purposefully misses the heart. Dee says all he needs to take back to her family is her ring. Meyer carries Charlotte into the ship. Dee and Layla watch the castle crumble from outside. Layla asks for a ride to the next town, and as she mounts the horse, we see the ship take off into the sky. The movie ends with a funeral, A little blonde girl runs up to Dee, who is watching from afar, and says, "Did you know my grandmother Layla?" Dee says, "I'm here to keep a promise to an old friend. She thought no one would mourn her death, and I'm glad to see she was wrong." And that is the end. We're going to do it. I was a little nervous about doing it because it is a lot to undertake, but we are going to do the ratings. How sexy or alluring are the vampires of the Vampire Hunter D universe? So they can mind control you into obeying them, as we see in the first one, but that feels a little more like assault, and that is not sexy. The humans are horrified by the vampires, not in love with them. And then we get to the second movie and we see Meyer, who is more of a romantic vampire, the kind of vampires we love in this show. But that kind of feels like he's the outlier, since Carmilla is definitely a monster in this version. Count Magnus Lee was a monster. His daughter was horrible. So we're going to give them the honorary vamp point, and we'll give them 1 for living forever and staying young. I'll give them 1 because Meyer is loving and he would die for his true love. And we'll give them 1 more because we know that the existence of Dampiers means that the vampires do have sex. But that is it. I'm going to give 4 out of 10 onks for sexiness and allure to the vampires of the Vampire Hunter D universe. And I'm just talking about the nobles, obviously, because the lower class vampires are just a 1 out of 10. They're animalistic, and really nobody's hooking up with that. So, all right. How sexy how evil or scary are the vampires of this universe? I mean, the Count mesmerizes and uses human girls because he's bored. And then he discards them when the newness wears off. Carmilla is ready to murder Charlotte so that she can come back from the grave. And even before that, her cruelty was obviously very well known. Everyone was talking about it. And then she was like messing with people's minds and having them see all these visions as she killed them one by one. They all have monsters protecting them and working for them. The villages live in fear. They have powers. They have magic. And you need someone like Dee, who's a very, very, very special thing, to come along and kill the most powerful of them. I mean, these vampires are definitely more scary than they are sexy. I mean, they're pretty freaking scary. So I'm going to give them 8 out of 10 stakes to the heart. They lose 2 points. 1, because they are bound by the sun. And 2, because there's so much infighting and backstabbing that it distracts them from like really taking over. But if they wanted to, if they could just like stop fighting, they could kill off every human and just take over. So I think they're very, very scary. Definitely something you want to worry about. Tropes I love and tropes I hate. I already told you, I hate the trope of the vampire who falls in love with the human and is like, I can't doom you to my existence. I love you too much. I hate that trope. I do love the idea of a Dampier. I don't like born vampires, but as we found out, Lamika is like Dee. They are Dampiers. So I do like the idea of a Dampier, and I love the idea that a Dampier is like the only thing that can really kill these most powerful vampires. Not psyched about the fact that his dad is Dracula, but they did write it in the mid-80s where it hadn't been used quite so much, so I will allow it, but not a huge fan of bringing Dracula into the mix, which you guys know that about me. My thoughts. Okay. I am not a huge anime fan. I did see Vampire Hunter D in high school because everybody was talking about it. And then I saw it again in theaters earlier this year for the 40th anniversary. I had never seen the second one. And I know it may be sacrilege, but I thought the second one was so much better than the first one. I really, really, really enjoyed it. Now I understand why these books and movies were groundbreaking, and I do understand how elaborate and impressive the world building is in this universe. But my critique, especially of the first one, is that if you don't know the books, then you've just lost so much. A lot of it is lost if you don't know the books. There's a lot that is not explained, which leaves a majority of your audiences very disconnected, and they can't really appreciate what you've done because you've left so much out for them. That is my frustration. But the second one has such a beautiful and easy to follow story. It genuinely moved me. It made me feel for the characters. The animation itself is very beautiful to watch. The vampires are portrayed more thoroughly. The lore around them is much more robust. I'm such a sucker for romance, and Meyer and Charlotte's romance was perfect. Even if they were doomed from the start, it still was just beautiful. And the scene, I'll try and show it on YouTube, but the scene of her going up to him, even though it's not him, it's Carmilla, but the scene of her going up the stairs to him, and there's candles around them and there's music, and he bites her neck and it spins around. It was so reminiscent of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I just thought it was so beautiful. I absolutely loved it. I think I even posted it and said like this or nothing. Beautiful to watch. I don't know if I'm ever going to watch the original again, because at this point in time, I will have watched it 3 or 4 or 5 times just to get all this done and edit everything. I will say that the one that I watched in theaters, and then the one that I watched online, and then the one I watched on DVD were different. So if you watch the one on DVD, what the actors are saying versus what the subtitles are saying are not the same, and it actually gives you more information. But I don't think I'll ever watch it again. I don't think I need to revisit it, to be honest. I've seen it enough, but I will definitely watch the second one again. I could see that one, like if I have another vampire party, I could see that one being on the rotation to just have up and playing. So I will definitely watch that one again. So PCS Extra videos, thank you so much for recommending this to me. I'm glad I sat down and watched it, and I'm glad it pushed me to finally review the first one, which has been on my list since I started this podcast 5 years ago. So I promise you, next week, the last week of August, I am doing Modern Vampires. I know things got like a little messed up because I ended up having to pull Captain Kronos forward because I couldn't get to this one fast enough, and Captain Kronos was done. So I pulled it forward and I just like messed everything up. I'm sorry, but I wanted to get something out to you every week. And you will see for the next 6 weeks that these videos are gonna drop on a Monday. And that's because I want to be in the chat with you guys, and I can't do that on Sundays because I'll be at Ren Fair. So make sure you're following me on Instagram so you can see pictures from Ren Fair. If you're in Pittsburgh, come out and see me, or put down one of the events in October. Or if you're in the Philly area, go see me at Vampa, or go see me at Monster Mania. It's going to be so much fun. Again, I'm going to try really, really hard to make sure I get something to you every week all the way through October. So please bear with me. I promise I will get it done. In the meantime, thank you for joining me on this one. This is going to be a nice long one because it's an hour, and that's without adding any clips. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your recommendations. Keep them coming. If you made it all the way to the end, put Carmilla in the comments so I can thank you personally. And as always, I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening.
And big finish. Thank you.